Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. While Frank Fritz were given the boot from American Pickers in March 2020, fans were blindsided. However, that became only a drizzle before the real typhoon hit. Because in September 2024, information of his passing sent triples via the collector's world. As heartbreaking as his death turned into, it wasn't. Even the most startling element, rumors about Frank's final phrases, dispatched chills down the spines of individuals who heard them, and simply while it appeared just like the shock could not get any heavier, his property revealed a few something so dazzling it left anyone puzzled. However, earlier than we dive into the discoveries that left each person reeling, permits take a second to remember one of the maximum passionate creditors the sector has ever known. You see, Frank Fritz got here into the world on October 11th, 1963, in Davenport, Iowa, with a natural curiosity that set him aside. While maximum kids his age had been chasing flyballs and tearing through the modern comic books, Frank changed into chasing records. If something had a tail, irrespective of how small or insignificant it seemed, he desired to comprehend it. Vintage cash, rusty beer cans, discarded stamps, even razor blades that had long outlived their usefulness. He believed every item had beyond a motive, a place in a person's existence before touchdown right here. And he desired to realize each detail. As he grew, so did his ardor. He went from pocket-sized collectibles to bigger treasures, bikes, dust motorcycles, and uncommon memorabilia that carried the burden of history on their wiped-out surfaces. Flea markets have become his battleground, estate income his playground. If there has been an old barn off a forgotten highway full of relics from the beyond, Frank turned into the man knocking at the door, equipped to dig through the dust. To maximum people, it became just an ordinary hobby. To Frank, it became a calling. But right here's wherein things took an surprising flip. He failed to dive proper into the world of antiques as an alternative. Existence pulled him in an exclusive direction. For nearly 25 years, he labored as a fireplace inspector in Iowa. It changed into a severe-non-nonsense task, one that required an eye for detail, precision, and a commitment to keeping human beings safe. However, Norley, how a good deal time he spent checking fireplace codes and analyzing buildings. His ardor for gathering never flickered out. In fact, his activity only introduced gasoline to the fire each day he stepped into antique firehouses, deserted warehouses, and forgotten buildings, places brimming with concealed gemstones, expecting a person like him to bring them back into the light. It really is, whilst he discovered himself gathering firehouse memorabilia, helmets with soot-stained, leather-based antique fire alarms that once rang through the chaos, extinguishers that had visible their truthful proportion of movement. Frank hunted them all down. It wasn't lengthy. Earlier than he realized, he turned onto something bigger than simply a non-public collection. Those relics were not just charming, they'd real fee. So he started buying and promoting, slowly turning his ardor into an aspect business. Soon sufficient, the concept of turning his ardor right into a career started creeping in. At this factor, he had spent years operating a steady job. But deep down, he knew in which his coronary heart turned into strolling away from a stable task wasn't clean, but the pull of his real passion becomes stronger. So he took the leap. He opened Frank's Finezza, small antique, keep focusing on fireman's equipment and rare collectibles. At first, it became only a modest step in the direction of something new. However, what he didn't understand became that little shop turned into thebasis of a profession that might quickly catapult him into an international of treasure-looking adventure, and subsequently the sort of fame he in no way noticed coming before American Pickers made Frank Fritz a familiar face. He became only a guy with an eye for hidden treasures and a love for the fun of the hunt. However, Frank wasn't alone on this ardor. Some other Iowa local, Mike Wolf, had the equal obsession. They failed to start off as pleasant friends. However, their shared love for choosing delivered them collectively through the years. Mike had the big vision. He saw selecting as extra than only a hobby. It changed into a way of lifestyles that became something huge. While Frank was happy walking his store, Frank's finds, Mike became busy filming his treasure-searching adventure Spitching a TV display to everyone who could listen it took a few convincing, however sooner or later, Frank signed. On what started as two guys hitting the street in search of forgotten relics become a reality TV juggernaut when American Pickers premiered at the History Channel in 2010, it struck gold over 1 million human beings tuned in for the primary episode, making it one of the network's maximum hit debuts. But the display's magic wasn't simply in the antiques, it became in the chemistry between Mike and Frank. Their excitement wasn't scripted, and their friendship turned into as real as it were given, that they had already spent years building relationships within the antique world, incomes admire for their fair offers, and deep understanding now. With cameras rolling, they have been taking audiences. Alongside for the experience Mike had, the business instincts continually searching out the next large-ticket object. Frank, on the other hand, was the heart of the operation. He had a way of creating humans' experience, comfortable turning disturbing negotiations into friendly conversations. He wasn't pretty much the cash. He virtually cared approximately the memories. At the back of the gadgets, they discovered that authenticity made him a fan favored. Whether or not he was geeking out over a vintage motorcycle or sharing with a supply of viewers, saw a person who cherished what he did for over a decade. American Pickers turned into a must-at week after week. Frank and Mike hit the street, digging through barns, garages and junkyards, in seek of hidden treasures, with Danielle Colby protecting down the castle at Antique Archaeology. The trio had a dynamic that simply worked. They were not simply commercial enterprise companions. They have been buddies chasing their Adour together. However, no road journey lasts forever. And for Frank, the journey that when appeared limitless took a turn. Nobody predicted the primary signs that something turned into off with American Pickers did not spark immediate problem. Frank Fritz's closing appearance aired in March 2020. But given the unpredictability of the sector at the time, most visitors assumed he'd be return, dearlier than lengthy. What they failed to know become that behind the curtain, Frank turned into dealing with a series of struggles that would ultimately exchange everything. Frank Fritz never talked plenty, approximately his personal struggles. But over time, some matters became not possible to disregard for years. Fanatics observed his weight going up and down. Some figured it become simply a part of aging, while others concerned something turned into wrong. Subsequently, Frank discovered that he had Crohn's ailment, a chronic situation that attacks the digestive system. It is painful, unpredictable, and exhausting at the beginning. Frank tried to control it by way of sticking to strict diet, which helped him lose 65 lb. But Crohn's isn't something you could simply restoration. It is something you have to fight via each day. The pain, fatigue, and uncertainty had been always there. However, he no way let it forestall him from doing what he loved. However, fitness troubles weren't the only element weighing on him. Fame adjustments matters, and for Frank it wasn't continually for the better. When American Pickers took off, life were given a lot greater complicated suddenly. He wasn't just a guy hunting for antiques. He turned into a fact TV star. Everywhere he went, human beings identified him, anticipated him to be the equal, amusing, short-witted guy. They noticed on TV. What they did not see turned into the strain that got here with it. Frank admitted that being within the highlight made him hectic, and through the years it took a toll. However, it became in 2020 that the entirety surely fell apart. Frank's health were given so bad that he had to go through primary returned surgical treatment. And unluckily, it wasn't a minor procedure. We're speaking about 185 stitches, 2 rods in his spine, and our recovery system that might take months. On pinnacle of that, he changed into struggling with personal demons, including addiction. Initially, his absence seemed like a transient damage time to heal and get lower back on his toe. However, as American Pickers moved into its 21st season, without him, fans commenced asking questions. Then in July 2021, Mike Wolf made it reputable Frank wasn't coming returned. Mike launched an announcement, pronouncing he'd leave out Frank and needed him. The exceptional, however exceedingly, Frank failed to purchase it. In an interview he known as Mike's, phrases hollow and dropped a bombshell that shocked lovers for the duration of his entire recovery. Mike had by no means once referred to as toe check on him. Decades of working collectively, and now not an unmarried cell phone name. Frank made it clear that their courting had in no way been as near as people concept on display they'd chemistry. However, off-screen matters were distinctive. He believed Mike had been looking for an opportunity to push him out of the show for a long term, and with Frank out of fee. That possibility, sooner or later, arrived. Fanatics have been stunned. How should guys who had spent years traveling, giggling, and constructing a hit show together just fall apart like that? As anticipated, the internet exploded with debates. A few blamed Mike for turning his again on Frank, while others pointed to Frank's private struggles as the actual cause for his departure. In the meantime, Mike answered through, insisting that everybody on the show cared about Frank, however also recommended that getting him lower back on the right track had been a project, the fact as constantly was, more complex than anyone in suspect of the story. A pal of both men later discovered that years of operating, collectively lengthy days, excessive strain filming schedules, and the strain of preserving a high show going had worn them down. Upload in Frank's health battles and private struggles and the cracks in their friendship have become impossible to ignore. The pal defined it as a state of affairs where both guys truly needed a spoil from the daily grind that had fed on them for over a decade. So when you think about it, this wasn't about one moment of betrayal or a dramatic fallout. It became approximately longtime colleagues who, after years of working facet through facet, had grown apart under the load of fame pressure and private struggles. For lovers, it was a tough tablet to swallow. The display had made it experience like Frank and Mike would usually be a group. However, real lifestyles informed a very distinct tale even after stepping far away from television. Frank stayed deeply involved. Within the antiques world, he understood that the manner humans gathered became converting with greater buyers, turning to online purchasing. He tailored launching his own digital storefront and the use of social media to hook up with creditors around the world. For Frank, it wasn't approximately staying relevant. It became about maintaining the spirit of selecting alive in a new era. However, if there has been one element Frank cherished just as lots as antiques, it turned into bikes. His passion for bikes started younger. One in every of his earliest big purchases became a 1964 Harley Davidson, a motorbike that probably had his parents involved, but cemented his love for vintage rides over the years. He built an outstanding series filling a whole barn with rare and classic bikes, and he did not just acquire them, he shared his expertise. In 2013, he wrote the Way to Pick Vintage Motorcycles ebook that broke down the whole thing, from recognizing hidden gemstones to maintaining classic bikes. He even threw in a segment on antique toy motorcycles, proving that his love for accumulating wasn't simply about the big stuff. It became approximately the details, the craftsmanship, and the testimonies in the back of every piece. Beyond his own series, Frank made it a factor to provide return to the antiques community. He teamed up with other specialists to host vintage fairs, exhibitions, and live events, helping join creditors and dealers with the same ardor he had. He also co-authored American Pickers, Guide to Picking Presenting Enthusiasts, a deeper appearance into the sector of picking. What made Frank special wasn't just his eye for a first-rate discover, it became the manner he made history feel thrilling, whether or not he become speaking about a rusty gas pump or a forgotten toy from the 50s. He had a way of bringing the beyond to life. To him, selecting wasn't just about shopping for and promoting, it turned into about retaining memories, a live one treasure at a time, and even as maximum humans. Concept that his feud with Mike might keep for years, the whole lot would change after tragedy struck in July 2022. Frank's lifestyles took a devastating flip. He suffered a major stroke at home in Davenport, Iowa. Through the time assist arrived, he changed into unresponsive and the state of affairs became vital. He turned into rush to the clinic, wherein docs worked to stabilize him, but the damage became excessive. Fans who had followed his adventure for years anxiously waited for updates, hoping he'd pull through. After almost a month within the health facility, he became moved to a rehab facility to begin the long exhausting road to restoration. A stroke doesn't just knock you down, it can cast off everything you as soon as took, without any consideration. For Frank, who had spent years traveling the U.S., placing offers and dwelling existence on his very own terms app, turned into a merciless reality. He should not contend with himself, and a court docket needed to step in appointing a father or mother to handle his day-by-day desires and a financial institution to supervise. His budget, the independence he'd usually valued, turned into all of a sudden out of reach. And then there has been the value his scientific care reportedly racked up 29.000 a month, more than a few that made it painfully clear just how an awful lot he had lost. But if there was one sudden final results, it changed into how the stroke changed. Matters between him and Mike in May 2023. Something befell that no one saw coming. Frank asked to see Mike after years of distance, bitterness, and unstated words. The two in the end sat down face to face. A pal who was there later shared that it changed into emotional. Both men have been in tears. Mike told Frank something that hit deep. No one could ever update him for the first time. In years it wasn't about the display, the commercial enterprise, or who changed into proper or incorrect. It was about the friendship they had constructed long earlier than American pickers become even in concept. Simply two men who cherished the thrill of the hunt, visiting back roads, locating forgotten treasures and sharing a dream after the whole thing. That bond become, nevertheless, there may be buried beneath years of resentment, however, never actually damaged. Via September 2024. Frank's health had reached a breaking point after years of combating illness. His frame turned into too susceptible to combat anymore. The people closest to him knew the end become near, and whilst the call came, Mike did not hesitate. He rushed to Frank's side, joining Frank's mother and a close own family pal. The room became quiet, heavy with unspoken phrases and the weight of the entirety they have been via for years. Matters among Frank and Mike have been complicated. However, in that moment, none of it mattered. All that changed into left turned into their friendship. The actual wound past the cameras and headlight traces. Mike later shared that he was holding Frank's hand when he took his ultimate breath. He whispered to him, telling him he loved him, that he forgave him, that everything turned into K, after which simply, like that, Frank become gone before he passed. Frank's last words hung in the air, unsettling but significant. The pastis in no way absolutely long past. It's continually, with ooshiding within the shadows, coming from a person who had spent his lifestyles unearthing forgotten treasures. The one's words felt almost poetic. His loved ones, nevertheless, think approximately them, questioning what became on his thoughts. In the one's final moments, according to his loss of life certificate, Frank's passing turned into a result of complications from his stroke. On pinnacle of that, he had been fighting aortic stenosis, a circumstance that made even the best duties walking, respiratory status laborious. His body had been via a lot, preventing every step of the way. However, in the cease, it just could not preserve on any longer. But at the same time as his passing marked the cease of an technology, what turned into located in his estate in a while was so surprising that even those closest to him may want to hardly consider it. You notice Frank's love for bikes changed into no mystery, but what few realized changed into just how extensive his collection had ended up after his passing. While the doors to his personal storage had been in the end opened, what became inside shocked even folks that knew him. Great row after row of vintage motorcycles crammed the space, some care cautiously restored and sparkling under the lights, others included in dust, watching for their second to shine again. There have been uncommon Indian motorcycles, classic Harley-Davidson and custom choppers that were meticulously accumulated through the years. Some bikes were fully restored, while others sat in pieces mid-project, proof of a passion that never faded for Frank. These weren't simply machines. They had been recollections, moments of adventure, and a testament to his willpower to the craft of choosing. He had traveled the US over to find them, spent years restoring them, and held on to them like valuable relics of a bygone era. The thought of them being sold off feels nearly unthinkable to those who knew how an awful lot they intended to him. Yet in keeping with assets and public sale is already inside. The works one, so that it will see every motorcycle, each vintage sign, and every carefully preserved piece of history move under the hammer. But here's the component no one saw coming. The proceeds might not be going into a private property or enterprise fund as a substitute. They may be donated to charity, turning Frank's lifelong passion into one final act of generosity